Hi everyone, it's Kat with Kat Warren Photo. Thanks again for tuning into my channel. Today's video focuses on a Lightroom edit of a boudoir shoot that I did with Lindsay in San Diego, California. So let's get started. Now this was taken at Heritage Park in Old Town San Diego. And what I'm going to first do is go into the presets panel of Adobe Lightroom, adjust for the glamour portrait, and I'm going to adjust it for about 120 on that amount sliding bar. The next thing that I'm going to do, as you can see, is go to the lift shadows presets. I'm going to lift those shadows because I want a vintage look for this particular portrait. A lot of times it helps progressively if you do the split screen before and after to see what your progression is and how the picture is coming along. Now, after I get those two presets, I'll go into the basics panel, and I'm right now fooling around with the light grade. I don't believe that anything at this point needs to be changed, so I'm going to go right into the exposure. And the one thing that you'll see me do, like I do in previous videos, is I like to work with the extremes of the sliding bars first, and then I'll work my way back into the middle until I find a comfortable setting that I like. Now, the one thing with this particular adjustment in the highlights is her chest is probably the brightest feature compared to her face. Although her face is okay, I'm trying to adjust for that. So later on in this video, you'll see me adjust and brighten up her face to counterbalance some of the highlights in her chest. We're going to lift those shadows even further now. Now, a lot of times, since I did brighten up the whites, I'm going to counterbalance that by adding some blacks into it. So I'm darkening it to give it a little bit more contrast, although I don't want too much contrast in this photo just because, again, this is a vintage look that I'm aiming for. Now, my personal style when it comes to texture and clarity is I like less texture in my portraits, but then again, to counterbalance that, I also pop a little bit of clarity into it, although not too much. Now, for the dehaze, let's talk about the dehaze feature. In this particular portrait, I don't want too much dehazing, so I'm actually going to slide the dehaze bar to the left. I think that looks pretty good. What do you guys think? Vibrance. You know I love the color, so I'm popping in the Vibrance. And specifically what I'm looking at is her hair, because she has those natural highlights from the sun just reflecting off her hair, and it's just such a beautiful feature. So I'm definitely adding that Vibrance without it being counterproductive to her skin tone. And the way I adjust for that, I'm going to desaturate the orange in her skin tone without compromising her hair color. What do you guys think so far? Are you enjoying the edit? Are you enjoying the video? If so, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. I usually do at least one video a week, if not more. So I definitely appreciate your continued support. You guys are helping me so much. So again, thank you. A lot of times I'll fool around with the hue color just to see how it complements the skin color or the skin tones of the subject. I'm just at this point trying to figure out between the yellow and the green. And at this point I was getting frustrated because you could definitely see the distinction between the tips of the grass and the actual grass itself. So what I ended up doing in just a few seconds, as you will see, is just zeroing out everything and starting from the beginning again. Yeah, sometimes it's just best not to even fool around with it. Again, I want this to have a lot of color, but at the same time, I want this to also look somewhat natural too. We're going to add a little pop of red to the picture. Now, here's the fun part, the color grading. Again, I start off with the shadows, and then, again, keeping in mind that I want a vintage aesthetic to this portrait. I'm actually going to be bold and daring and pop a lot of color into this. I'm definitely not feeling the blue. I'm definitely not feeling that left top quadrant. So this right here seems to be what I like to work with. And the one technique that I have when I do these color gradings with the circles is I usually, again, start off with the extremes, meaning the outside edge of the circle, and then I'll work my way into the color wheel. Because I'm sure, as you guys know, the outside, it's more of a drastic color grading than the inside of the circle. So I just kind of fool around with it as I'm making circles. You know, I'll start again with the outer edge and work my way in the middle. How do you like that for the vintage look? I think it looks pretty nice, pretty elegant. So now I'm starting with the highlights. So we've already done the shadows. Now I'm doing the highlights, and then I'm going to leave the midtones and the global color grading for the last. Now, I'm laughing because I'm just wondering if any of you guys have the same problem with going down this rabbit hole of color grading, because literally I can spend probably 10 minutes just color grading alone. Does anyone feel the same? Let me know. All right, so thankfully I moved to the midtones. We're making progress, y'all. But the midtones are really fun. And then I'm going to have even more fun when I do the global. Let me ask you this question. If you guys were doing this particular portrait and you were color grading, what colors would you choose for this? Do you agree with my edits? Do you disagree? Would you do things differently? I'd like to know. Now, here is my thought process when I was editing this, when I was color grading it. At this point, I felt like it was too yellow. So I'm trying to find a good balance between the yellow and the orange. And I'm close. I'm getting there. just not quite there yet. But again, do you guys notice that originally I started outside the outer edge of the circle, and now I'm making my way back in, making a little bit more modest changes? We're nearly there. What do you guys think so far? Okay. At that point, I felt like something was missing from this. And so now I'm fooling around with the color temperature at this point. And I think I like slightly warmer than cooler. So I'm going to account for, I believe, 6200 just to make it even. Now let's fool around with the tint. Let's see what we're working with. Okay. And again, I think there's just too much yellow in the portrait at this point. So I'm going back to that color mixer just to see what I can do. It's looking better. Again, another before and after. And at this point, because I left it the shadows, a lot of times when I do that, I'll just leave the tone curve alone because it ends up complicating things if I do the tone curve while having that lift shadows preset. Now, as you could see, I wasn't fully satisfied with the overall color grading, so I just made that minor adjustment, added a tint of blue to it, and that seemed to work a little bit. Now, after we make those lens corrections, I'm going to do a radial gradient. And I'm not doing any type of separation. Well, I originally did a separation for the background, but it was just not what I was looking for. So as you'll see in a few seconds, I undid that and I decided to just keep things simple and just do a standard radial gradient where I brightened up her face. So there you go, I just undid it. So we'll go back, we'll do another radial gradient, but again, like I said before, we'll brighten up her face. Just a little bit. And then we'll add 2 more gradients. We're going to add a linear gradient to the grass because I do think that that's pretty bright. It's kind of distracting. So we'll do a linear gradient with the grass and then another linear gradient to the side to darken up her chest a little bit. Okay, I think that's pretty good. And again, there's no visual or obvious distinctions from what I can tell under the thumbnail. So we're going to move on with that second linear gradient. But this time it's going to cover her chest and make it a little bit darker. That way her face stands out more. Okay, I think that's good. Now here's another fun part. Before and after. Do you guys like what you see? I think that's pretty good. One thing that I'm going to do is, well, a couple of things that still need to be done. We're going to add some grain to the photo. And we're also going to add some vignetting as well. But first, completely forgot about this. But remember how we actually softened the overall picture? Well, because of that, we're going to add some sharpening and some clarity around her eyes. That way her eyes pop out. And one thing that you guys can do to save some time, which I didn't do just because of habit, but you can do a layer mask, just one layer mask with the brush, and make those changes simultaneously. Sharpening, clarity, and anything else that you want. But for some reason, the way I was raised, I just do separate layer masks for every single adjustment, which may not be the wisest thing to do for time, but that's just how I like to do things. I like to keep those separate. So brightening her eyes is the last step that we're going to do. And I'm going to brighten up that All right, guys, we're just about done. Just a few minor adjustments. No lens blur. I was shooting this at a nice aperture of f2.0, so we got some really, really nice buttery blur in the background anyway. But we're going to adjust for the vignetting just a little bit. And then for the grain, we're going to pop a lot of grain into it because, again, I do like that aesthetic vintage look. A lot of times I'll change the roughness from 50 to 30. I think that looks really, really nice. What do y'all think? Pretty satisfied with that. So I think 50 for the amount is too much, so we're going to drop that back down. There you go, y'all. And that is the vintage look that I was going for. What do you guys think before and after? Well, thanks so much, guys, for tuning in to today's edit. Again, I really, really appreciate it. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And until next week, take care.